So might want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a great panel, and I wish we were going to have more time and could focus in on more specifically on some of these issues. Professor Scott, one of the things that I heard you say a while ago was about the regulatory agencies doing some kind of cost-benefit analysis kind of before they get into the rulemaking process. And I think I heard you also say that you thought that they ought to have possibly a comment period on the analysis before they moved into the rulemaking process. I think that's a good idea. And I think in the future, one of the things that may be something we want to embed into the legislation. Would you agree that that would be a beneficial?
Yes, I do agree with that. The way the process works is when an agency proposes a rule, if it were to work correctly, they would do a cost-benefit analysis to justify the proposal that they were putting forth. And we do build into our system comment periods on proposals. So insofar as cost-benefit was part of that, there would be an opportunity to comment. I think a key part of what I'm saying is we should have an expert comment on that, which is OIRA. Okay, it's part of OMB. It's their duty to comment on cost-benefit analysis done by the non-independent agencies under the current executive order. I think that should be expanded. They should comment on the independent agencies' cost-benefit analysis, but with a difference from the non-independent agencies, that comment would not be binding. So we would preserve the independence of the agency to take those views into account, do with them what they might.
Yeah, I think one of the things that many of us are concerned of is that we had a CBO estimate of what it was going to cost to stand up Dodd-Frank. Chairman Backus and I are going to send a letter today to all of these agencies that were impacted by Dodd-Frank to actually get them to furnish us a financial model of what they think implementation costs are going to be and continuing costs are going to be for this pretty massive blanket of new regulation. And I think that's appropriate. I wish maybe we'd have done that a little bit more detail before we got here. I think the question, and when we talk about jobs, we need to get back to that, but when I look at Dodd-Frank, and I'm going to be, I asked the panel to respond, can you point to a provision in any of Dodd-Frank that made capital more available, that it made it more accessible, and that it lowered the cost of capital for companies and people that access capital? Can you point to me where in Dodd-Frank where we actually maybe accomplished something that's important to job creation in this country, and that's capital access and cost? One of the things that I believe we've created in this country, I mean, back when people were making lending decisions and investment decisions, they were looking at, credit risk. They look at interest rate risk. I would tell you that Congress has created a new risk, and I think we need to start measuring it, and it's called regulatory risk. That entities lose their propensity for innovation or providing certain kind of products with some concern that they're going to somehow either there will be a regulation down the road that will prevent them from continuing that business model, or even worse, that whatever road they've gone down somehow somebody interprets a regulation that's not appropriate. So, Dr. Poole, we'll just start with you.
I do not believe that Dodd-Frank was constructive legislation and that it missed the biggest problem, two biggest problems. One is obviously Fan and Fred, and the other is a frontal attack on too big to fail.
I agree with those 2 points, plus it does things that really have nothing to do with the financial crisis. I would mention the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on that list.
I think Dodd-Frank will make the financial system, it's not a perfect piece of legislation. I don't think there's ever been such a thing. But it will make the financial system, that combined with the capital requirements, higher capital requirements and better supervision, will make this financial system safer and more resilient. So will it increase credit tomorrow or next year? No, probably not. But will it help to prevent the kind of squeeze in credit that we had last year and the year before and the year before that? I think it reduces the odds on that.
Professor?
Well, I'm less sanguine about our capital rules than my colleague Dr. Cohn. I think we, and this is, again, as I said before, not so much Dodd-Frank, but the Basel process over in Switzerland is overburdening the financial system, and I think the Congress needs to get into the weeds on this. We can't let Basel go on without supervision. I think it's irresponsible. I think there are two examples where I think actually Dodd-Frank may have improved things. First of all, I think in the securitization process, there was a lack of disclosure as to what the risks were on the underlying loans, and I think that actually impeded the process, made it worse. I think Dodd-Frank has corrected that. I think the provision in Dodd-Frank for central clearing of derivatives is going to reduce risk and make capital more available. I think it would be a very good idea, Congressman, to do an inventory like this in a systematic way, which has not been done, and I think your question is very well taken.